monster! Be quiet! I am sorry, my lord. The boy is young and foolish. He does not know what he says.
Man, shut your ass up, bitch ass.
Welcome everyone to the new series I will be starting on my channel, Samurai Jack, which will be replacing Hero Inside since I just finished that series. There should be an iCard somewhere around here so you can check it out. So Samurai Jack is a beloved series that I am sure many kids who watch Cartoon Network in the 2000s remember. It is a series that I watch with my father a lot, and I would say it's one of the series that had a large impact in who I am today. But I will get more into my own personal feelings about this series near the end of the video, as well as how I will be going about reviewing the series. A note before we begin, I will probably have to edit the clips I use, so if you want to see it unedited, go check out some of my other sites I upload on with not as harsh copyright guidelines. I will have my link tree in the description so you can check them out there. We will be doing the first 3 episodes since it's one long continuous storyline, and as a kid I had the DVD that advertised it as a movie. But now I hope you all enjoy my review, and make sure to like and subscribe if you want to go on this nostalgia journey with me. Now, let's get into it. We have a silent opening of the sun being eclipsed, and it causes this lone dark tree in this wasteland to awaken. With this being now released, we just ominously zoom in and pan to its face with the first words we hear in this series. He says that he is now again free to terrorize the world as he once did years ago. And we then transition into Jack's father telling him about the legend of Aku, that he had fought him years ago with a magical blade and eventually sealed him away. And once that evil was conquered, as emperor, he rebuilt the land, and there has been peace ever since. Now we do get a 2-part episode actually showing all of this in the future, and it's one of my favorite episodes of this series, but we will get into that eventually. As Jack is playing in the palace, Aku arrives, with the army trying to fight him off, but he just absorbs everything they throw at him and throws it back at them. His father tries to go after his magical sword, but Aku stops him. But he tells Jack's mother to enact their operation that they have been planning for years in advance. And she locks in, taking the sword and escaping with Jack, giving him over to some sailors to take care of him, while she has to go into hiding from Aku. And thus begins his multiple decades-long journey to become a warrior that will be capable of wielding the sword that will destroy Aku. He learns how to read constellations from the sailors who drop him off in India, where he learned how to ride a horse and rode to what seems like an African tribe to learn how to fight with a staff. And once he was done learning that, they traveled to Egypt so he can become educated by them, most likely learning many things from them, and seem to have stayed there for the longest time so far. Since the next time we see him, he went from an 8 to 10-year-old to a young teenager in Rome, I think learning how to wrestle. Then we see him as a mid to late teenager, learning from what seems like goddamn Robin Hood, who teaches him about archery. Next was him learning even more about sailing from Vikings, and then he went to, I think, what is Russia to practice axe throwing, and then learned horse combat from what seems like the Mongolians. And then his penultimate stop was to a monastery to further train his combat skills in hand-to-hand and with weaponry, with his final stop being to finally obtain the sword he was destined to wield. We get a touching scene of him being reunited with his mother after all this time, and her revealing the sword and Jack's iconic robes. We see him practice with it for a bit, but then he sets off to free his people. We cut to what has become of them, and they became slaves, mining crystals and building monuments to Aku, with Jack's father turning one of them, with the minions keeping him on the edge of working him to death. Jack comes in defeating all of the minions, with his father being in disbelief that his son has returned. His father explains what has happened to them, with Jack proclaiming that with the sword he will vanquish Aku. But his father tells him not to put all his faith into the sword, because evil can be deceptive and it will often find a way to survive. Jack then travels to Aku's lair and comes face to face with him. Of course, Aku laughs at him until Jack, to his surprise, actually damages him.
My people, for my father, for my birthright. Hey yo, what the fuck?
They begin their fight, and at least I think it still holds up today. With my favorite transformation Aku takes being his octopus form, because it just looks creepy with how they animated it and the music accompanying it. But Jack eventually seals Aku within the sword and releases him to finally kill him. But Aku was able to trick him and opens up a portal, flinging him thousands of years into the future, and thus ending the first episode.
Bye-bye. See you later.
So let's get the characters out of the way first. The Emperor, Jack's father, was voiced by Sab Shimino, who also voiced Uncle from Jackie Chan Adventures and Monkey Otso and Master Yu from Avatar The Last Airbender. I didn't even realize that he voiced all of them, so that was a cool thing to find out. With the Emperor, we see throughout this episode that he seemed to be a great warrior and leader. Sealing Aku, and just in case he ever came back, made a plan with his wife to ensure that the safety of their son was assured, and to make sure he would become a great warrior being trained all over the world from different cultures. And even when he finally did see his son again, he was not afraid to scold him, basically saying to be self-reliant and to just see the sword as a tool to guide him to his destiny. I will, of course, have more things to say about him in the future episodes. Now, let's move over to Aku. He is voiced by the late great Mako, with his full name being Makoto Iwamatsu, and he was also the voice actor for Iroh in Avatar. Aku was one of my favorite childhood villains when I was growing up. His character design is pretty simple, but very striking when someone sees it, with his appearance being based off of Oni from Japanese folklore. And thanks to his simple design, they can easily animate him shapeshifting into all different kinds of forms. And let's not forget that his name literally means evil in Japanese. And that's basically his character for this episode. He just wants to dominate and torture all beings in the world from what we see, with the only thing that can hurt him being the magical sword forged from righteousness that is his complete opposite. He gets more character as the series goes on, but that's all I will say about him for now. Then we come to the star of the show, Samurai Jack, who is voiced by the legendary Phil Lamar, who has voiced Hermes from Futurama, Static from Static Shock, Jon Stewart from Justice League, and Baxter Stockman from the 2012 Ninja Turtles. And as a kid, it blew my mind that a black guy voiced Samurai Jack, because my kid brain thought since he was Asian, he was voiced by an Asian guy. And he gave Jack such an iconic voice, which is one of the many reasons I believe that voice actors don't have to be the same race they are playing, and should just be whoever the director thinks has the right voice for the job. If that kind of casting was implemented back then, we wouldn't have the fantastic voice of Jack. Now, getting into his character, Jack really did have a difficult childhood, with Aku just busting in, destroying everything he knew up to that point, and having to separate from his parents. But he did end up having one hell of an education, learning from different masters from all over the globe and from many different cultures. As a child, because I think I was like 4 or 5 when I first watched the show, this was my first introduction to a lot of these cultures. And I love that during his journey the music changed to reflect the culture he was in. But after he was finally done with all that, he got his classic design with his white robe and sword. Again, this design is simple and striking. But we saw after finally defeating Aku, he took time to gloat when he should have just said nothing and just ended it, causing him to fail in his mission and to truly start his journey through the series. And now I have pretty much talked about everything I need to, so let's move on to the next episode. So we start with Jack being plopped into the future, falling onto a flying car. He proceeds to leapfrog his way down with what looks like some kind of law enforcement shooting at him for some reason. But once he finally gets onto the ground, he meets his first locals. And man, do these guys have some great personalities for only being on screen for a few minutes. I'll geek out about them more once I get into the discussion section, but I love these guys. But they basically let him know that Aku rules the whole Earth, and it's always been that way. Jack, of course, is extremely stressed hearing this, so they tell him to go to a club that's behind him and get a drink. So then comes a heavenly moment for me, because the music once he enters and just the design of the club and all the aliens made my imagination go wild as a child. It's one of the reasons I wish this show was made a little later in my life so we could have had an official soundtrack to the series. 'Cause just listen to this perfection. But of course, Jack, seeing all of this for the first time, just stares at an alien, so it punches him and tells him to get out. It then refuses his apology and proceeds to attack him. After Jack disarms him, his whole crew pulls up to fight, but Jack disarms them too, with it literally raining arms. Some sentient dogs see Jack doing all of this and go to ask him for help. They explain who they are and tell him that they were looking for someone to help them get from under the grasp of Aku, since he has enslaved them to dig up jewels just like Jack's people. He also finds out that they date Jack's cells to before Aku ruled the Earth, so they confirm that Aku sent Jack probably hundreds of thousands of years into the future. Hearing all of this, Jack agrees to help them, and we see him make up his new name, Jack, from what those guys were calling him before. But during all of this, an employee of the club was listening in on their conversation, and it turns out she was a spy for Aku and tells him about Jack's return. But before she tells him, we see some aliens asked to live on Earth because their ocean was stolen, and Aku just straight up tells them, "Yeah, I did that, and you're not going to do anything about it." So one of the aliens yells at him and tells him that he is a monster, so he teleports him to a place called the Pit of Hate.
"You monster, be quiet! I am sorry, my lord. The boy is young and foolish. He does not know what he says."
Man, shut your I could have asked you out a bitch ass.
Which sounds like a place I would never want to get sent to. And he then just tells them to construct statues of him to rise out of the ocean once a month and shoos them off. So he finds out about Jack after all this time and immediately sends an army out to destroy him. Jack gets to their mining site, and man, am I surprised they let this on a kid's show, showing that dogs being crucified.
Jesus Christ.
A dog comes to them and tells them that Aku's drone army is coming and they will be there by sunrise, ending with Jack looking out at them, determined to fight them. So, to get voice actors out of the way, first is Jeff Bennett, voiced McDuffie, the black dog. He has also voiced Dexter's dad from Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, Clay from Shaolin Showdown, and Prowl from Transformers Animated. Rob Paulsen was Rothschild, the main dog of the group, and he has voiced Yakko from Animaniacs, Jack Fenton from Danny Phantom, Carl from Jimmy Neutron, and Donatello from the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then the waitress that reported back to Aku was voiced by Jennifer Hale, who has voiced Miss Keene from Powerpuff Girls, Jean Grey from Wolverine and the X-Men, and Katnape from Shaolin Showdown. Now getting on to the episode proper, I want to say I love the three guys Jack meets that gave him his name. And surprisingly enough, I didn't even know this, but they all have names too. Their names are Cole Lampkin, Home Slice, and Brobot. Lampkin being my favorite because I love the way this line was always delivered.
But then that gutter will come out all and the trash is all munching and crunching and snack mixing.
Me and my dad had a riot whenever we heard them talking because of how energetic it was. As a kid, I understood almost nothing of what they were saying. But now as an adult, I understood about 90% of what they were saying. It's always cool to me that when you're a kid, you may not understand something, but once you get older, you get that, oh, now I get it moment. Speaking of that, this show was also my first introduction to what a nightclub was, because I did not understand any of what was happening with all the lights, music, dancers, and implied alcohol. I don't know if any kid show could get away with this kind of imagery nowadays, because Samurai Jack was Y7 if I remember correctly. And again, just listen to this music. And I also love the look and feeling of the future city being grungy and having so many jagged edges everywhere, with a constant tint of black and red on everything, subconsciously telling us that this all belongs to Aku. But now let's get on to what happened with the characters this episode. Rothschild and his group are trying to find people who will fight Aku for them, but I would be like that guy who told them off. Who in their right mind would fight against Aku, who has been ruling over the earth for probably tens of thousands of years at this point, at least? I do understand why they are looking, because they are backed into a corner at this point, with their people working themselves to death and being crucified if they don't meet Aku's quotas. Which again, I am surprised they let that type of thing through the censors. But they were able to get extraordinarily lucky with finding the one guy that actually has a chance of standing up to Aku in Jack. And man, did Jack have a rough introduction to the future with immediately getting shot at. His senses getting bombarded with the loud music from the club and seeing so many aliens for the first time, which would freak anyone out and react like he was. And finally getting into a fight with an alien gang in that club. But now Jack has seemingly found allies in the dog people, and we will see how he is going to deal with Aku's army that is coming next episode. And I have nothing really to say about Aku really. He is just being his evil self, and I love him for that.
I know of your plight, Vadaquian, for you see.
It was me, Parry.
We start with them seeing the beetle drones running towards them in the distance, and Jack, seeing this, gets to work. He starts to assess everything he has at his disposal, like their mining equipment and crystals they mine. And we get a funny joke of him not understanding how a pen works. But then we get a montage of him and the dogs preparing everything. And I have to say, seeing all the prep time of them setting up all the equipment is pretty awesome. Like Jack discovering the asset that is the crystals they mine, and that they can be used as arrowheads and spears, and him befriending the alien horse they use. All of this feeds the part of my brain that has an obsession with strategy games. Then all of it being completed with him making his family's flag with the dog paws on it, and them making his and his horse's armor with the cherry on top of him having a dog hood ornament on his helmet to further represent who he is fighting for. We cut to the morning of the attack, and we get this magnificent sequence of Jack riding in on his horse into battle. The beetle droids wash over the land like a black tidal wave as Jack puts all of his traps into motion, and I will go more in depth with all of this in the discussion section, but we get to see how truly skillful Jack is. They eventually start taking him seriously and attack him en masse, managing to knock him off his horse with his horse getting out of there.
I gotta get out of here!
They keep piling on him until they rip off all of his armor, but he keeps mowing them down. He escapes from them for a moment, leading them into more of the traps he set, with this one beetle droid that always made me laugh as a kid.
I believe I can fly.
My favorite trap being the pit trap, because you just hear silence and then with all his resources exhausted, he makes his final stand against them, and man does he fight. getting his robes torn off, and then getting himself covered in the robot's oil. Of course, since this is a kid's show, they made all of these things robots, because they definitely can't show him covered in the blood of his enemies. But I honestly did not like the slow motion they put in here, because I feel like it went on for too long in my opinion. And then the last moment of the fight where he actually made the droids afraid of him and just tells them there is no escape is such a badass line, my goodness. Ending it with him standing on a huge pile of the destroyed remnants holding his family's and the dog's flag in victory. The dogs then thank him and invite him to travel with them, but Jack refuses, saying that he has to right all of Aku's wrongs and find a way to get back to the past so he can destroy Aku and stop this future from ever coming about. Ending with Aku seeing all of this, telling Jack that he will be the one to end their rivalry when he sees fit, laughing at him as we roll into the credits. Since there isn't any new voice actors, we can get into the meat of this episode, which is seeing what Jack can do with all of his skills and half a days of prep time to destroy an army. So we see him put his education to use, being able to draw a map and battle plans for everyone, because I am sure through all of the places that he went as a child, someone taught him military strategies. We then see him make a bow and arrows out of the crystals, with him being deadly accurate with them, since he was trained by goddamn Robin Hood. And we see him set up rocks that, when they are hit, produce sparks to set the barrels on fire to explode, and he was able to shoot a launch button on the machines to hurl boulders at them while riding on horseback. And speaking of this alien horse, I just loved its design as a kid, with it harkening back to his time in India learning how to take care of horses, and it looks super cool with its 6 legs and awesome armor the dogs made for it. I do think Jack is one of the few characters besides Batman that can actually do something if you give him prep time. And this last episode is a great full circle moment for the first episode with all of its references to it. And there's not much else to talk about with this episode because it was mainly action with very little talking. So next I will talk about the creator of the series, Genndy Tartakovsky. He was basically the creator of my childhood. He was the creator of Dexter's Laboratory, which was one of my favorite children's cartoons as a kid. He worked on Powerpuff Girls as a director, producer, and writer. And I always headcanoned that the city the dogs were in was the city of Townsville in the future. He was the creator of the Hotel Transylvania movie series, which I have only watched the first one, but I hear that the others are okay but go down in quality as they go on, as most movie franchises do. And finally, he was the creator of Primal, which has been one of my favorite animated series as an adult, and which I will be reviewing after I am done with Samurai Jack. Genndy is a respected and experienced creator, even though he does have a few duds here and there, but nobody can be perfect, unfortunately. As I said before, I grew up with this series, and I will say the major thing it does that I don't see any children's cartoons do nowadays is let the scene sit. They don't let there be silence for a few seconds, or they don't let there be no dialogue for long periods of time, like the first episode having very few lines of dialogue and basically none through half of it. And the lessons it instilled in me were things like being able to quiet your mind so you can focus, being able to persevere and struggle through hard work because once you get to the end, it will be worth it, and learning to let go of your anger, because if you let it consume you, it will eventually destroy you. And many more lessons that I will get into as I review the series. So I really hope you guys will go on this journey with me. Now, how things are going to work on the channel for this series is that I will review 2 to 3 episodes every video, depending on how much time I give each episode, because I want each part in the series to be between 10 and 20 minutes long. Then once we get on to season 5, the season that aired on Adult Swim, I will probably section that out into 3 parts altogether, because man did that season have problems the longer it went on. I am partially dreading ripping into that season. If any of you have any questions for me, don't feel afraid to ask me in the comments. We have come to the end of the video, and if you are still watching, I would implore you to like the video and subscribe, because I will be getting more episode reviews out soon. And if you are watching this in the future, make sure to check out the playlist for the series if you want more of what I showed here. With all this done for now, I guess I will see you guys later. Bye guys.